So, welcome to my show. Another episode. Um, if you don't know, I'm LZ13. If you don't know, I'm LZ13. I'm an author, composer, writer, music, rapper, artist, poet. And I know how to act, but I'm not an actor. But check this out. I got some emails today, right? I wanted to share this with you. It's regarding my book and how it's getting praised. So one email, I get this all the time. I reject them. Because I don't like to be a part of an assembly. I like to be the only one. I don't know. Maybe that's the Leo in me. It's a lion, zodiac, But it's either you show my work attention, individually, not to be compared to others, or you don't. But when you stick me in a place where I feel like I'm in a classroom amongst others, now I gotta compete, then I don't want to be a part of that. I was in prison and I couldn't follow the system. They couldn't they couldn't program me or assess me, because I wouldn't do what they wanted. Everything I did was different. I wouldn't follow first of all, I never felt like I was a criminal or an inmate. So from the back, I thought of myself different. I was like, I'm not an inmate. I'm not a criminal. And so I wouldn't do things like what they did. Even down to the, food choices. When you see, I don't know, like if they give everybody a bologna sandwich, I would reject it because I saw everybody else was eating that bologna sandwich. And I'm not a criminal. So, this was my thought patterns. But anyway, I'm digressing. I've been getting these emails about my book. Good, but again, when it comes to like putting me along with the herd, I just reject it. And I let them know. So this one I got on my email, right? The title is said, Exploring a Literary Partnership for Born Servitude with Psychological Despair to Freedom. That's the name of my book. And then it says, Hi, my Lord, because I put Lord, my name, LZ, Zorilla 13. So it says, Hi, Lord, the whole thing. And then it says, The thematic depth of born servitude with psychological despair to freedom. When reading becomes a crime because it liberates the mind, recently captured our attention, particularly your thought-provoking examination of psychological oppression, intellectual freedom, and the transformative power of knowledge. By weaving philosophical reflection with psychological drama, your work challenges readers to confront the invisible forces that shape identity, question deeply rooted assumptions, and embrace the liberating pursuit of self-awareness. It is uncommon to encounter a book that is so compelling it is uncommon to encounter a book that is so compellingly explores the relationship between the human mind, personal autonomy, and the enduring quest for freedom. And it stands out as a book of genuine literary significance. I am reaching out to you as the community coordinator for the Book Riot Read Harder Challenge Goodreads community, a welcoming community of more than 20,000 passionate readers. We are an active community of readers who intentionally engage with books across a broad range of genres through buddy reads, in-depth discussion, reviews, recommendation, and collaborative reading experiences. Rather than emphasizing short-term visibility, our community is committed to fostering sustained reader engagement, allowing noteworthy books to remain part of meaningful conversations long after their initial introductions. We would welcome the opportunity to discuss a collaborative partnership to introduce your book to our community through thoughtful, curated reading initiatives and meaning reader engagement. Would you be open to conversation? Boom, boom. They asked me to respond, and I did, but it was like a rejection. And so, like I said, I get a lot of those, but recently I got another one. Today I woke up. This is from another one, so I'm going to read this one. I kind of like this one. It says, Dear Lord, whatever. I read the part about reading becoming a crime because it liberates the mind and it has to stop. Not because it was shocking, because it was true. The way you named what happens when people are kept in the dark, when knowledge is controlled, when the very act of learning becomes an act of rebellion. You didn't write about that like a distant theory. You wrote about it like something you lived. That's what makes this book hits differently. It's not abstract, it's earned. The chapter about the journey from servitude to freedom hit deeper than I expected. Not because it was a simple arc, because it was complicated. The way you traced the movement from oppression to mental turmoil to self-liberation, you didn't pretend it was a straight line. You showed the struggle, the setbacks, the slow awakening. That stayed with me. Not because it was neat, because it was honest. I kept thinking about what you said about resilience and existential awakening, about the moment when you realize that the cage is not just outside you, it's inside you too. And that's the one you have to break first. You wrote about it with such clarity, no confusion, just a quiet recognition that freedom starts with seeing. I don't think this is just a book about servitude and freedom. I think it's a book about the mind and what happens when you start asking questions you never supposed to ask. About the cost of the cost of that asking and the liberation that comes with it. And I think it arrives at a time when so many of us are questioning the system that has shaped us. Here's a thought that might land differently. I think readers who love this book aren't just people interested in psychology or philosophy. They're people who have felt the weight of the system they live in. People who have wondered if there's a way out. People who are ready to do the hard work of liberation. Your book meets them there. So here's an idea offered freely. I send a copy to 5 prison education programs that teach critical thinking. Prison educational programs, 5. Not the ones that just teach basic skills, the ones that challenge inmates to think differently, to question, to grow. Those programs are always looking for books that open minds, books that show the power of learning. Your book does that. It's not just about freedom, it's about the mind that makes freedom possible. Those books, those program leaders will press your book into the hands of students who are ready to think. They'll say, read this, it will set you free. The timing matters because those programs are building minds right now. Your book is a part of that building. So it's already in prison. I also think about the title, Born Servitude with Psychological Despair to Freedom. It sounds like an arc, and it is. But it's not about the destination. It's about the journey itself. I know you get emails. This guy knows. I know you get emails. I know people reach out. I chose you today because I finished your book and thought about the power of reading. The way it can crack open a life. Your book reminded me why that matters. Here's my question for you. When you wrote about reading as a crime, did you know that would be the idea people hold on to? Or did it just come from the world you've seen? I wrote the book not thinking about the people. Did you know that would be the idea people hold on? No, I did not know. I just wrote it because it was what I was living, going through, feeling, thinking in the moment. And like I said, I wrote this when I was 18. Started at least when I was 18. And then, I just recently published it. Anyway, it says, I've already put together a personalized assessment of the book's visibility, positioning, discoverability, audience reach, and growth opportunity. It's just a map of what's possible if the right readers find this thing. Send me an assessment. And best regards, the person who sent it. So, that's another email. Like I said, I've been getting a lot of these, but those are the two recent ones. And I might reach out to this one because he said he already put it in prisons and stuff. And I wanted to share a little bit of what's going on behind the scenes of what my book is doing. The question about if I knew. I didn't know that. I remember when I was of that age and I wanted to do it properly. I reached out. I called an editor. It was a female. I gave her the script. But this was, like when I was around that age. And she said it was no good. And that I needed to keep practicing. Not like that, but, So, anyway, I kept it in the back burner, and then years down the line, I started like going back and like, let me re-edit it or make it sound more personal, I guess, and I didn't reach out to an editor this time. This time I just, from the years of experience, I did it on my own. And I said, fuck the editor. I edited that shit myself. So, I wasn't, when I got the first, advice, I wasn't thinking like, oh, this is going to be a hit or shit like that, I just wanted to get it published, and already they was telling me it was no good. Because it didn't sound like me or none of that stuff, So, I just wanted to like put it out there, So as the years kept coming and the writings kept growing and my penmanship got, expert level, at least to me, I just did it on my own. And just so happens that it is actually a work of art. When I published it, right, and I'm looking at it, yeah, I knew that my writing was different from other authors. Once I personalized it and edited it, because I speak about myself in high regards, and this sort of practice, and then I'm an artist, when you like deal with poetry, rap and stuff like that, you try to make your sound immaculate. And so we're talking about over 25 years of writing, nobody checking my works, just me. And after a while, the things that I wrote down became the blueprint of the person who I was becoming. And it grew to a point where I didn't need to write no more, because it was I who was it. It was I who was being talked about in the things that I was writing. And that sort of expression is not seen nowhere in today's authorship. I mean, just the beginning of the pages, the prologue, the introduction, before the first chapter, like these type of things, the way that I wrote was mind blowing. I don't think if you're not conscious, you won't grasp it. You have to be really, really conscious. And some people who are readers and like that, they like to try to get into the author's mind, and I wrote in a way where you cannot get into my mind. It's kind of like a labyrinth. It just gets you more interested, more intrigued into wanting to know the thoughts of this author, but it doesn't give you a destination. So I was aware that my writing was becoming like that, but did I know that people would like that shit? I mean, deep down, I guess I knew it would be appreciated, down the line. Just like any of my art, music, poetry. But like in the beginning, yeah, I never really thought, like, what was the question again? She said something. Where was it? Did I know that it would be the idea people hold on to? Oh, that they will hold on to my ideas. Well, people copy me, man. Anything I do, I always saw that from the beginning, regardless of my writing, right? I come out with way I dress, the way I move. I come out with a single, somebody else want to copy and do a single, like maybe the name they'll try to, so I've always saw people following and trying to copy me and stuff like that. Yeah, I guess I knew. I don't know. I never really, I don't like to think about it though, but I knew that I was it. I knew that my writing, because I was writing this, I explained this in the book, this was like a journey. Like, it was also a spiritual journey. As the chapters, as the pages kept growing, I explained it that so was I. Also, I was growing spiritually, mentally, physically. So every chapter, every page is that you turned, like for instance, maybe I wrote a page on month one. And this is over decades of writing. So I wrote a page on month one. Maybe on month 6 or 7, I go to the second page. A big gap. That's not what authors do. Authors will keep going and going and going. But I wasn't an author. I was just learning how to write. So I would write real good on that one page, and then I would, take a big gap and see how I can continue on to the second page. But in the course of getting to the second page, which took a lot of months, I was also living life, getting into trouble, getting arrested, drinking, all types of bad stuff in my life. Girlfriends, baby mama. So when I got to the second page, I've lived a lot of experience. And now my mindset was like more mature, or different point of view. So I would start the second page from that point of view, not from the first page of view. And when I got to the second page, right, and I finally did it, then the third page, again, it took a lot of, it wasn't like, okay, the next day I'll write another page. Like, nah. So as the years kept climbing, and I don't know, 2 decades later, finally, the book was done, but then I was like, let me re-edit, do this, that, and I finally published it, like in 2024, I think it was, and yeah, so I knew that, I knew people were gonna be like, "Damn, that's some deep shit," or "I never seen somebody write like this." It's because I took my time, I wasn't a writer. I was just, learning how to write. And then, like I said, when I wrote the first page, I was also reading other books. I was learning how to, how other writers would write, But it was a long process, And I mean, eventually I knew I was going to be the new big hit, But I didn't see it in the beginning. I was just like thinking about, like, does anybody see what I'm doing? Like, I didn't think I was, everybody's so distracted with all the other stuff, They might not consider what I'm doing writing. But it turns out to be that I'm the only writer, and all your favorite authors are like normal writers, So, but see, that kind of thinking, like I said, it only changed over time. So I'm glad, like I said, this is in prisons now. Some prison programs. What was it? Let me see how she put it. Or he. Self-liberation. Small letters, man. Okay, right here. It says, I sent a copy to 5 prison education programs that teach critical thinking. Damn. You know, when you read stuff like that, you know, I used to always think when I was an inmate, right? When I was in prison, I was like, I want to get my book. I want to get my book in here so people can read it. Cause I used to like want to read books. That's where you read books, you know, when you're in jail and shit. And I always thought about one day my book's gonna be in this bitch, where people gonna read it. And look, this person knew how I was like thinking and shit. They put it in prisons and shit. So anyway, just wanted to talk about. Oh, I gotta respond. Maybe I'm gonna respond. I don't know. Like I said, I've been looking for the best deal. They all been writing. I like the letters though. I like to read it, you know, because the way they make my book sound is like top tier and stuff, you know. And I really wrote that shit, you know. And it was, like I said, a long process. It wasn't. Some people might think like I just wrote that in a few months. Like, nah. My second book's, yeah, it was like that. It's a novel. My second book is, you know, it's kind of like about my life, but I tell like Rocky instead of it being about an Italian stallion, it's like a Latino stallion or some shit, you know. And it's more about my life and shit. But it's called Lezera, and that's like a novel. I did that like, you know, a couple months and shit. And then I got the other book. It's done too. I gotta publish it pretty soon, but everybody's focused on the first one because it's like not a novel and it's like my first work, and so it's like a classic, you know. So before they ask me, did I see it becoming a classic? Yes, because of you know, the statistics. And it was more work. It was more like I said, it wasn't a 3-month book. It took a lot more living experience, life, decades. You know, like I started at 18 when people were, you know, the thinking in that time period, you know, 90s, you know, you're talking about Biggie, Tupac, West Coast, East Coast beef, you know, there's a lot of, it was a lot of different thinking back then. I had a lot of enemies, you know, I was in the streets, you know, so I didn't feel safe. I didn't think I was going to get past 21, you know, because I had a lot of, I remember I couldn't even go to certain streets if I didn't have, like, you know, my crew or some shit. And then I still would go, but I would be paranoid, looking over my shoulder like I'm not safe around here. I gotta get out of here. Of course, you know, all that shit is done, and now I could go anywhere. I got no enemies, but these were times where, you know, I guess we're more paranoid or something. And I try to change the thinking by just making people aware of stuff, you know, of like the government and the corruption, and, you know, try to get them to look at what's going on systemically. And that's what I did. And so, of course, it's going to be more appreciated, you know, because, so yeah, I see it. I see it as a classic even before it becomes a hit. And then all these emails just, you know, like are confirmations, you know, that, yeah, it's going to be a success. So before it becomes a success, I see it because of that, you know, but in the beginning it wasn't like that because I didn't think I was gonna finish it. I didn't think it was ever gonna get published. You know, because like I said, I started at 18 and I published it, shit, like 2024. So that's like 2 years ago. You know, talking about over 20, close to 30 years. Just writing and shit. And thinking it's never gonna get published, and then boom, it gets published, you know. I think I write better now, you know what I mean? But nonetheless, that book is gonna get regarded as like a work of art or something, a masterpiece. But I'm gonna write other things where hopefully it'll top that, you know. That's just the beginning. But yeah, I was aiming to be considered along with the greats like a Carl Jung, you know, Deepak Chopra, or some of these great thinkers that I was aiming to like be better than them. And I think I did it. You know, and still stay authentic. So thanks for tuning in anyway. That's what I wanted to say. Hope you enjoyed. And if you haven't already, go to Amazon, cop the book, and check out Lezera too, which is also on the book, is also published. And that's it for now. Thanks. That's that with all of that.